Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to another MFT Live. I'm going to give people a couple seconds here to find us and get here in the live. Or if you're watching on replay, thank you for being here. I am Libby Hickson. If we haven't met yet, I work for MFT, and I have been going live for the last 10 days, save one when I was sick. And today I have a very special guest joining me. But before we get to that, I just want to tell you real quick about our deal of the day at MFT. We've been doing deals for 12 days of Christmas countdown, and so today is day 10. And it's another Wednesday Blitz Day, a very merry Wednesday Blitz Day. There are 45 stamps, 45 dies, all at 45% off on the website. So that is a smoking deal that you're going to want to check out, and it's on mftstamps.com. If you go to the main website, you'll see the banner right there at the top of the page. You can click it and get to that category and have some fun shopping. So without any further ado, first of all, if you are here, say hello in the comments. I see Jody and I see Nicole. Hi, friends. Hi, Ziamara and Andrea. Nice to see you all. So thanks for being here. So today, as you saw on our graphic, we're joined by a very special guest, Lori Craig, who is with Olo Markers. She's going to be here to tell us all about the markers because it is something that I've been using on my lives, and we do have them in the store at MFT. So if you want to pick some up, we have all the colors. And they're so much fun. So let's go ahead and bring in Lori and say hello, and we'll get to talking about markers. All right, Lori, hello. Thank you so much for being here today. I think you're still muted, my friend.
Hello.
Hi, Francesca.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I guess I'm just going to let you just jump right into it and start talking about Olos, because I don't even know, you know all the things, and I'm just going to be here learning with everybody else. So thanks again for being here.
You know a lot. Thank you for having me. You know a lot, Libby. You've been using them, so that's been exciting. So my name is Lori Craig. I'm with Olo Marker, and I want to just kind of share a little bit about our product today. MFT has these in the store, as Libby has said. It's a wonderful product. There's a lot of things that are about, it's a professional grade alcohol marker, but it is suitable for an artist of any skill level. So thought we would maybe, Libby, tell you a little bit about the technology, why it's different, share a little bit of the coloring that I've done, some things that set it apart, make it easy for you to use, and kind of go from there. How's that sound?
Great. Sounds perfect.
Okay. So one of the things I want to kind of show you, talk a little bit about for just a minute about things that you can't see that kind of set the Olo marker apart from other alcohol markers that you may have used. And I've got a couple of props. So if and I think I'm a little delayed there on the desk camera. But if you opened up any marker that you might have in your collection, for many, many years, the technology of those markers has all been the same. If you would open the marker up, inside there's a felt wadding that would regulate that ink flow, and it would regulate the ink flow to the nib and then out the marker. And what happens with that technology is that over time, ink can start kind of hardening or coagulating in that wadding. And so that affects how you use the marker. It affects the ink that's flowing to the paper. So you might notice that if you have markers that have been in your collection for a while, that they may not seem as juicy as they once were, even if they've been refilled, or they may not color as smoothly as they did at one time. And that's just the nature of the aging process on the marker. So Olo is a lot different in the fact that it doesn't have a felt wadding inside. It's a brand new patented technology. And inside the Olo marker, the ink is free flowing. So if you have a clear one that you could see, the ink just free flows inside. And what that allows with the patented ink delivery system is it allows for the marker to feel like it's brand new every time you pick it up. So the ink is smooth, the application of the ink is smooth to the paper. The blending is just a little bit faster. Makes for a really nice user experience. So whether you're using it your first time or the 100th time, it's going to feel really nice on the paper. So I don't know, Libby, if you've experienced that feel. But those are some things that you really can't see. You can feel the difference when you're using your marker, but you wouldn't know the internal process. So the other thing that allows with that free flow technology is it allows for extensive ink usage when you're coloring. So there's as much ink in an Olo as there would be in a comparable marker, so comparable quality. But with Olo, you're going to use about 90 to 92% of the ink that's inside your barrel. The felt wadding that would be in a traditional marker will always harbor 25 to 30% of the ink that was in there the day that you bought it. So it becomes very economical when you look at the initial price point being lower and then the ink capacity being very comparable, but the use being about 20 to 25% more, or excuse me, 25 to 30% more. So it's just a nice all-around option to add to your collection.
That's awesome.
So people often, so let me show you the marker. That ink technology, that free flow ink technology allows us to put a full marker's worth of ink into what looks like a half a marker. So you have a full marker's worth of ink in one half of your Olo. And this one is a brush nib. It's a shiny matte black, not shiny, a matte black. And when I pull the cap off, it has a nice brush nib. This is made 100% in Japan. So in the fine art market and in paper craft, that's one thing that is important when you look at quality tools. Japan is renowned for their attention to detail and the quality that they put into their product. So just a really nice feature. So if you go to the MFT store and you start picking out colors and you are ordering a marker, this would be a single marker that you're picking out. It looks like a half, but it's actually a full marker's worth of ink and it has a brush nib. So the way that we sell them is you pick out two colors at one time, or some people pick out the same color because they like to have the same color on each end. And then you have a connector. Yeah, did you have the same color on each end?
I do,
I thought
yeah.
you did. It's just nice because I get used to looking and I want to pick up my color.
Yeah.
But I'll kind of show you how you can put different options together. But you can take two markers from the store, put them on one connector ring, and now you have two markers worth of ink, two nibs, and two colors on each end, or one on each end. Now, my markers are put together in a brush chisel combination. So it's a matte black signifies a brush, and then a dark gray signifies a chisel nib. I use my chisel from time to time. I like having the same color on each end. So I also like that intuitively, I know when I pick it up, that black end is my brush nib. The gray is my chisel. If I'm not if say you're not an artist that uses the chisel nib, or you want to just start with a brush nib, or you want to start with just chisels, you can certainly do that. You can kind of mix and match them together. So now I have a green and a light orange together on one ring. So when I'm using them, I can just flip back and forth. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility to kind of put blending partners together. Some people choose not to use blending partners. We'll talk a little bit about blending in a minute, but maybe they use complementary colors that that way they can hold them in their hand. So lots of different ways. Kind of our tagline is your marker, your way. So put this back together.
And it also makes it nice if you like to take your markers with you to different crops or whatever you might do. It's less markers you have to take if you have two colors in one marker. It's really cool.
Right. So the Olo range is 168 colors and more on the way. So we've kind of let our retailers know that we've got some new colors coming. And so I think a lot of people are going to be very excited about that. But the initial range, this marker is about 1.5 years, 2 years old, the product itself. And the initial launch was 128 colors, which gives you a really nice span across the rainbow. And it gives you a lot of nice grays that you can use for blending, extending your color range. And so when we add new colors, there's going to be about 32 that come into the color range and kind of fill in. And we took a lot of customer feedback for those too, Libby. So a lot of greens, skin tones. So I use the full, excuse me? Yeah.
More purples?
More purple. I use the full color chart when I'm working with mine because I do have mine set up with the same color on each end. But we do have a color chart that's available for artists that like to put different colors together. And so you can have one circle. I'm frozen, aren't I? There we go.
Oh, you're okay.
So
and by the way,
one
everyone that's watching, Lori, if I can just interrupt you for a second here. We know that Lori's connection is not 100% great right now, and we apologize for that. But, you know, we tried to fix it. It is what it is. The internet gods weren't with us today. So I think you can still hear Lori great and get all this great info as well. So continue, friend.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning that, Libby. We also have a color chart that allows you to mix and match the colors that you want on one connector ring. So I know if I'm looking for BG04, I'm either looking for BG04 on this chart or BG07, depending on how I have them put together. So it becomes really intuitive too. You learn pretty quickly how you're going to put them together. We talked about easy to identify nibs. One thing I want to say about the color system is the team that I work with, we've been in the alcohol marker business for many years. And so when this product was developed, and as I mentioned, we work with some really great designers in Japan, we kind of thought through what the whole potential color range would be for Olo from start to finish. And so as we add colors, they'll always fit into that numbering system that's very familiar to anyone who's used alcohol. So just let's talk about the color numbering system for just a second. Here, let's see. This one is here. I'm going to do OR 2.3 just because I have that in my hand. And so when you look at an Olo marker, you will have alphabet, you'll have alpha characters at the front. So, and these will always tell you what color family this marker is going to be in. So OR is going to be an orange red, and 2.3. So the letters will always tell you what color family. R is red, B is blue, G is green. The first number stands completely on its own, the 2. And this tells you what the saturation is of that color. So how much gray is in that marker. So when you look at your numbering system, if the lower that first number is, so V0, that's going to be a very bright, vibrant color. If you change that number to something that's higher, 6, 7, 8, let's see how far we go up here. Got V7.6. So this has a lot more gray in the V7.6. So the higher that first number, the more muted and the more gray that's going to be in that color. The last number tells me how light or how dark that particular marker is. So when I look at alcohol markers, and I think a lot of times people will tell you buy them in pairs that you can blend with, I want to look for markers that have a matching first letter and first number. And then I will change the lightness or the darkness based on the last number. So in this case, if I wanted to pick out blending partners that would go with OR 2.3, I would maybe look for a 2.1 or a 2.0, maybe. And if I needed something darker, I could go to 2.5 or 2.6. Because I'm keeping the first letter and the first number the same, these markers are going to play very well with each other because they've kind of got the same undertone, and you can do light and dark then blending those together. So when this color system was laid out, all of the potential range for Olos laid out at one time. So as we add colors, this numbering system will always make sense. So you won't buy a marker that's a new color in a year and a half or 2 years, and it doesn't fit into your color wheel or diagram. Let's see. Lori Olson says, you said that there are 168 markers now. Does that mean the new ones were released? I'm sorry, Lori. If I said 168, that was the misspeaking on my part. There's 128 now, and the new release will be 32 colors. So, but I may have said 168. So, Libby, you had some. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Colleen also asked if there's any news on a fine point nip. Is that anything you can talk to? Is there any thoughts on that at all?
Oh, there's a whole lot of thoughts on that. Would love to have one. We're working on it. So yeah, I think Colleen, a lot of people want that. So I think that you will, as soon as I know, we will share. We will share.
I figured that was the answer. And Seal's asking the second number again. That's the brightness of it, right? Or the intensity. What is the second number again?
The light to dark, the lightness, the darkness of it. Yes.
Yeah.
So.
And then the first one was whether it's brighter or it has more gray is duller if it's a higher number.
Yeah. Right? The first number is going to be your saturation.
Saturation. There's the word.
And then your, how much gray would be in how I would talk about it, how much gray is in it, but whether or not it's pure color, and then as you add, so if you think, like a mauve color is going to have a lot of gray in it. And so that number is going to be a little bit higher. It's probably going to be into the fives, R5.1, instead of a pure red, which is going to be an R0 point. So I had a couple of samples that we colored today. So I thought I would share those, and then I'll show you a little bit of blending since and I wanted to have the names of these, Libby, of these stamp sets. This is freshly picked bouquet. Yes. So one thing that I'd like to kind of point out is here we've done some blending with a red or an orange into a yellow. You can marry those hues together and create some depth. I've added some texture after my marker has dried. I think that's one thing that when we kind of color a little bit, everyone is always into the nice smooth blending, and that certainly is a skill that you practice and hone. But a lot of times when you're using the marker, you're adding texture and depth. And so you'll wait for that to dry and then come back over the top of it. I love this little bouquet. I'm definitely going to be adding this to a card front. And then I like this guy too.
Yep. And that set is called Being a Grandparent is the Best. And I think that's actually part of our Wednesday Blitz Day today. So if anybody loves that cute little guy, I think he's 45% off today, just so you know.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he was cute. And I stamped the grandma also, and I thought I would color her in just a few minutes, but nice range of skin tones, beautiful blends that you're able to get. So just thought I would share him. And then the last sample that I kind of shared for you came from
Touchdown. Baby Touchdown. Yep.
So and I'll just share with this. I'm from Kansas City, and so originally, and still live in Kansas. So this is my Travis Kelce and my little Taylor Swift. So today's her birthday. I'm not a Swiftie, but I am a football fan. So I got his little 87 on there, and
that's cute. I am a Swiftie, so that's great for both of us. So yeah, especially because it's Taylor's birthday. That's just perfect. Love it.
It is Taylor's birthday, so there's a lot of hubbub about her coming back and forth to Kansas City nowadays. So,
and Laura, you said that after this, you'll be able to post these pictures on the MFT Insiders Facebook group so that people can take a closer look if they want to.
I'm going to take some clear pictures so you can take a closer look, and I'll get those on the Insiders this afternoon. And so see, there's Kim's a Travis Kelce fan. So
and Jody's a Swiftie, so we got it covered at MFT.
They make a great team there, don't they, in the office? So I thought maybe we would just color for a minute. How would
That's
that
great.
be?
That's perfect.
Okay. No, and Gloria's from the Kansas side. Yes, Gloria, I'm from the Kansas side. I'm from Shawnee. So what I'm going to do is to start with this lady's, with grandma's dress, is I'm going to pick a couple of reds. I'm going to work with these pure reds that are zeros. So I'm going to do like 2, 3, and 4. And I take all my markers out that I'm going to kind of work with at one time and get those ready. And so I've got 2, I'm missing 3. There's my 3. Put these off to the side. And I thought I might work kind of in the bigger areas. So, and one thing that I do when I'm working with my Olo is I kind of get ready and take my caps off, and kind of whatever I'm working with, I hold all of that in my hand so that I can just bounce back and forth.
And does it matter how
And
long you have your cap off? I mean, it doesn't hurt anything to have it off the whole time you're coloring, right?
No, while I'm coloring, I leave them off because one thing that I found is I had a really bad habit of I would color and I would like constantly be taking my caps off and on, off and on, off and on. And that can draw some extra ink out of your nib. So I just kind of, and then I can work faster. So the I leave them off while I'm working. And then when I move on to something else, I'll recap them and move on to a different set of colors. So one thing that's different for me about this is the ink flow. When I look at these, it's just super smooth. And so if I'm coloring across my paper with one color, you can see how smooth, I think, even with the pixelated feed on my camera, how smooth it is with one pass. And that's because you've got a really generous ink flow with Olo. And that goes back to that patented system that's constantly refeeding ink to the nib. I don't have to stop and wait for that nib to regenerate as I'm coloring. So what I found was different about this was in using other markers. A lot of times I would color light to dark, meaning I would start with my lightest color and then I would bring in a little bit of my darker color and then go back with my light and reblend. This ink run is very smooth for me, and I don't really have to do that. So I'm going to start with my darkest color, which is R0.4, and I'm just going to lay in a little bit of color and then start blending out with like an R0.3. And I get the smoothest blends when I just flick the color in. And then I'll come down even to a lighter red and just come right over the top. A couple of different colors in my hand at one time.
And somebody asked me, I think maybe yesterday or the day before on my live, do I use them the same way that I use my other markers that I used to have? And I think, you know, I'm glad you're saying that you go dark to light like this, because that is maybe a little bit of a difference, that if somebody's getting used to them, it might be good to try it that way and see how they feel about it. So
yeah, try it both ways and see what you think about it. I'd always colored light to dark also, and that's probably the one difference that I have made. A lot of times too, like the line art on these is fairly thin. So you can see where I might I might color away from the line a little bit and then come back. And if I am having any kind of trouble, I just I will blend ink on the paper. Sometimes I will use my lighter marker and pick up some color to blend in. I think that's one thing you and I talked about this earlier, Libby, was just the idea that no matter what medium you're using, you play a little bit and kind of learn something each time you do it. And, you know, the ability to practice. So, but yeah, I just lay the dark in first, and then I come back with that light and kind of blend it out. And then I might come back at the very end and come up close to my stamp line. I'm heavy-handed. So the reason that I will color away from that line and then come back is if I have any if I've gotten too thick with my ink or used too much ink, it helps me minimize bleeding outside the lines if I do that. So a lot of times I do work away from it a little bit and then
That's
come
really
back.
smart.
It just
I think I was
helps.
oversaturating the other day and I was having it come out a little and I was right up against the line. So coming a little bit inside the line is a really good tip. I appreciate that one.
Yeah, because once you go back out, you can fix it, but with the zero, which I'll show you, I'm sure that because we haven't talked about that zero marker at all, have we?
No, we sure haven't. And I know those of you watching, it is a little hard to see what she's doing, but hopefully you're listening to her tips and you can kind of get the idea of how she's going around with the dark to light with her colors and
And
really
I'm
fun.
sorry, we even tested this morning and we were all set up and it was great. So I'm not sure exactly what the difference is. I made the other person that shares the Wi-Fi with me leave today so that there was no one else sucking any of our bandwidth. So let me show you a lot of people might call this a colorless blender. We call this the zero marker. So this is the only marker in the OLO system that is not black or gray. This is a clear ink and it is the alcohol agent. We call it zero for its artistic value. There's zero hue, zero saturation. But what it's instrumental in is either fixing mistakes or adding texture and creating dimension or texture on your image. So I want to show you kind of how that works. It's going to be difficult to see probably with my camera, the way it's set up, but let's work on her hat and I'll color outside the line and then kind of show you how I would fix that. So bring in my light and I will post these afterwards, but say this is really exaggerated, but I want to be able to kind of show that fixing that. If I'm get colored outside the line with the zero marker, this is not an eraser. What this does is it pushes ink across the paper. So a lot of times the instinct might be to pick it up and then scrub right over the top of wherever your mistake is, Libby. But if you'll take the marker and work behind the mistake and just press the ink towards wherever you want it to go, it will push that ink back into the lines. So it'll allow you to fix mistakes when you have colored outside the lines. And if it doesn't move all at one time, a lot of times it doesn't, just let it dry and then come back and push it again. That's one thing about alcohol ink is you do have to give it just a second to dry, because when you're looking at it as it's coming out of the paper or out of the marker, you get a little bit of discoloration from the moisture that's in that. So you kind of have to wait and let that dissipate just a little bit. But, and I can tell that this it's still kind of wet there. So I'll just let it dry and then I'll come back in a few minutes and pick it back up. Now, and I can come back to any of these and rework them anytime. So it'll re-wet, reactivate when you come back, like the dress is dry, but we can come back and start working on it again and just reactivate the ink and keep blending, keep adding depth, we're adding texture. So
I think I need to practice a couple things you're saying. I am quick to go to like a white gel pen rather than trying to push with my zero marker. So I'm going to practice that a little more. And then also I think I'm too impatient. I don't always let it dry first and then come back to it. So that's a really great tip as well that I'm going to have to think about and practice more. So I love it.
Yeah. When you want that smooth blend, that blend happens while everything is wet. But when you want to bring in texture, the texture type of distinction is going to happen when your first layer is dry and then you bring a new layer in. So Kim says, with the different barrel technology, are you able to leave the lids off while you're coloring? And should you keep them on as much as possible? Yeah, Kim, I leave them off while I'm coloring one color set, and then I will recap them and move them on, move on to a new color. Sometimes if I think, okay, I might not be done with that red, I might just leave them at my desk with the caps on, but not necessarily clicked tight. And then when I'm done with them, then I'll stick them back in and move on to a new color set. So, see, let's look at her skin a little bit. So a lot of fun skin tones. I had pre-picked out that I was going to look at colors 3.2 and 3.4 ORs.
3.2.
Libby, have you been able to color a lot lately?
I have, yes. I love it. Especially because I've been doing these daily lives, and I showed on my lives before too. I've just been die cutting a whole bunch of stuff and just have them in my little tray and have them sitting here ready to color. It's so much fun.
Yeah, you have been very, very busy. So
good busy, fun busy.
So now this hair, I'm going to take some cues on the line from the line art here, where you can tell that she's intended to have really curly hair. And I don't necessarily need a nice soft blend on that hair. So I just kind of dabble that color in. And I've started with a dark, and then I'm going to add a little bit of a light color, and I'm going to let that dry, and then just come over to, and the idea is I want to leave a little bit of white space so that I can see some distinction between my two colors. You know, I think the idea is that every time you pick up an alcohol marker, you're going to color really nice and smooth, and that's just not the case. A lot of times you want that texture for a variety of reasons, you know, skin on animals or hair, or I did the little grandpa in the beach, and so I was adding some sand at the bottom.
Fun.
But just by dabbling and touching in, you can get some of the changes in that texture. So.
Excited to color while I'm watching you, since I have these images
Ready to
all
color
stamped.
Yeah. What are you working on today? Or can you say?
I can. I just had this cute little Yeti here with the balloon, so I decided to pick him up and start coloring him. Yeti or not.
Yes, it's smart to
just ask.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I like to die cut first because I sometimes mess up my I hate to spend all my time coloring and then get my die cutting a little off. That drives me crazy. So I just get them all ready to go and have them here at my desk so I can play. But also, Linda asked, what do you think about embossing and then coloring the image with embossing? Like if you embossed in black or gold or whatever color. Any thoughts on that?
You sure could. I have not had really any issues. I have done that several times. Sometimes what I will do is set my stamp up in my MISTI and I will stamp it with a flat color, and then I'll do my coloring, and then I'll come back over the top and emboss it. I just like that look. I think it looks really crisp that way. But I don't think that there's any problem in embossing. A lot of times when people talk about alcohol markers, Linda, they'll say to use a clear embossing powder because the alcohol can pick up just a little bit. It can like etch at the embossed powder, and you can pick it up and damage your nibs. But the clear doesn't have that same effect. But I've never done it enough that I've really had an issue or found a problem doing that. I often will emboss with gold and then color. But like I said, sometimes I will stamp it, color it, and then come back over the top and emboss it. It's tricky using your stamp platform. So Gloria, you are asking, can you use the half marker? You can, it's just a little bit short. So In my hand, I don't have quite enough space to hang on to that marker. But one thing that we do offer is a handle. So if you just had a single color, we have handles that are white, black, and red. But you could put an artist handle on it. And some people really like the way that this feels. It seems like it feels like a paintbrush to them. And so then gives you the ability to just use a single marker. The marker certainly will work in the half because this is your full component. There's nothing else to the marker. It's completely capped in this side. It's just a matter of whether or not it's comfortable in your hand that way. So let's add a little bit more texture to her hair. Libby, do you always die cut first and then color, or?
I have been lately. Just like I said, I don't want to take the chance of messing up when I'm trying to line up my dies. You know, that's a me problem. And so I like to just have a whole, and plus I just die cut a whole, I stamp in my MISTI, you know, a whole bunch. I make a little jig with my die cut pieces, and then I can make the spacing perfectly around my image and then be able to do a whole bunch of them. I did that on my live a couple days ago. So if anybody wanted to see that process, it's there for replay if you wanted to see, if you've never done it before. But I just take the die cut negatives and put them around the stamping so that I can have it all perfectly spaced. And then I just die cut all the little images and can put them right in that. Yeah, I die cut the, like on white, I just die cut it without stamping, and then I put it in my MISTI and can stamp it really quickly and easily.
Yeah, I'm all about trying to minimize. I kind of do the same thing whenever I can. I'm going to come back to this hat, and I'm going to use the 0 marker, that colorless solution again, and I'm going to push some more of that blue back towards the hat to keep working on my color correction. I really made an exaggerated step outside the line, so it might take several times for me to do that.
Made it hard on yourself, huh?
I'm sorry, might not even happen while I'm on yourself. Yes, I did make it hard on myself. So that's all right. So I'm going to work on her face. Ooh, that's dark. Grandma's got a tan. So, but yes, I will add the images, and I can take questions, and feel free to tag me.
So tag her if you're on the insiders group on Facebook, if you're a Facebook user.
Yep,
you can always, if you're watching on YouTube right now, and if you wanted to ask a question, if you're watching this on replay, especially, it's better to put it in the main comments on the YouTube video rather than in the chat. We probably wouldn't necessarily see it as much in the chat, but if you do have a question, I'll keep an eye on that for the next couple of days, and maybe come back and ask Lori if we need to clear anything up.
For sure. So. And just to kind of let you know, the ink that I'm using is MFT's black. So really crisp, nice image. It plays very well with alcohol markers. So that's awesome.
I'm using as well.
Yep. And this is just kind of how my approach. I just kind of work my way around my image and keep coloring and keep adding and fiddling. And, you know, kind of keep in mind that some areas of the image I will blend smooth. So here I've, you know, added my dark, and then I'm coming in with a lighter color and then some areas like her hair, I'll just kind of dabble and pounce the colors.
I think your picture cleared up.
Did it clear? I wonder. Yeah, it did, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, it looks great now.
Oh, wow. Maybe you have to start over now. I'm just
Seal asked what colors you usually use for skin tones. Do you have any go-to colors that you might want to recommend to her?
It just depends, Seal. When I pick up, like, I just kind of plucked some colors out today. So what I'm using today is OR 3.4, OR 3.2, and then I'm using an OR 2.0. So I'm not in that natural blending group anymore, but it still works really nice.
I'm going to Of course, there can be there's a wider range of skin tones. So
Yes.
there's lots of things you could use.
Lots of different combinations that you could use. I think I've got a little skin tone chart too. I'll try and put that in the
Ooh.
insiders, Libby, when I
that would be super helpful for everyone. Hi, Rick. Nice to see you. And Mindy, I didn't say hi to you earlier. Thanks for being here. Hi, Ruth. Hi, Gloria. Hi, Lori. Lori's been in so many of these lives. I appreciate you for being here. Hi, Linda. Let's see. Kim mentioned how it's great that you called it colorless solution because Blender is such a misnomer. Yes.
Yes.
And one thing we were talking about a little earlier, but I'll say again, if you feel like you're not loving some of your results with alcohol markers, just practice, because that's how you get better, is you just keep trying things. There's so many tutorials out there, YouTube videos, things that you could watch for ideas, but also just get out your markers and color. Lori and I were talking about earlier when we were offline, how it's just, relaxing. Even if you don't turn it into a card, you could just stamp out a whole bunch of images on a sheet and just sit and practice your coloring. I mean, that's why they make coloring books for stress relief, right? So it has a relaxing quality to it. So anyway,
and Libby, I know we talked about it, but I used to think that either you were born with an artistic gene or you weren't, and that people that were born with it just boom had it and everything was golden, and people that weren't, they were out of luck. But it's a muscle, your artistic ability is a muscle that you have to practice. And so just pick things up and work on them for the enjoyment of, the therapeutic benefit and the enjoyment of figuring out what works for you. And you really can improve. I'm a living testament to that. So I would have never said that I was very artistic. I've always loved to color. I used to, I remember in grade school, I would just, I wanted it to rain every day so we could stay in and color for weeks.
Yep. And was the greatest thing in the world when you get the 64 box of Crayolas?
Oh yeah. My mom never would buy the 64 pack. I was so deprived as a child.
It was a special treat.
Right. But I did love it. And man, I could make some rainbows with my protractor like nobody's business.
I love it. That's awesome.
So I'm going to come back and give another little push on her hat, and eventually I will get all of that ink pushed back in. So I just remember I start with my dark and then feather it out with my lighter color. That seems to work best for me. Everybody has different techniques that work really well for them. So don't be afraid to experiment and figure out what that is for you.
Yeah. So. And then Jody asked again about skin and hair. You said you'd have some skin possibilities to post in the Insiders group. Do you have any for hair? Is that anything you have?
What the list typically ends up being about the same for skin and hair, because it's all just so subjective, right?
Right.
But I think when you look at the color chart, and if you are looking at in those OR ranges, because that's where our browns tend to fall. Sometimes people will, some nomenclatures and different brands will use a B for brown, not a BR for brown, or maybe an E for earth. We've really fit it where it falls as far as mixing the color, which is that combination of orange and red.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of stay over in this quadrant, and I try and pick colors that go together. If I'm looking for something really bright, I stick with that lower first number and play around. But I will share some ideas, Libby, for that.
And then here's a question from Rick. I realize I could be putting these on the screen for people to see, but do you think these are better with 2-color blends rather than multiple shade blends? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I'd rarely do a 2-color, Rick. I almost always bring in a couple of colors. Usually I'm working with 3 to 4. So just depends on what what your style is, I guess, but don't be afraid to bring in more than two. Definitely have that feasibility to stretch and blend together. So, yeah.
Any other questions for Lori while we have her here? You guys have anything else that's burning questions you might have about Olo markers or color
Yes.
choice tips or anything else?
Yes, Rick. So Rick says, so like normal marker blends, I think you'd find it very similar to other blending you might have done. But just like the main difference for me is just that I usually start dark so that I am blended out. And what that does is it allows me to keep my color pure, Libby, when I start with that dark. And if I can minimize how many times I'm going back and forth over the top of it, then I find I don't lose my color by washing it out with the lighter. So.
But I do think if you're starting out with these markers and you have a budget, you can achieve some great blends with 2 markers.
Oh, yes, for sure. For sure. I'm sorry if I misinterpreted Rick's question.
Oh, I don't know that you did. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, for sure. You can get some really nice blends with 2 colors. The other thing that you're able to do is, if you have a very limited palette, one thing that I would encourage someone to do would be to add in some grays. Because that gray will let you extend your color range. So like this is a warm gray 1. And so on this hat, if I want to kind of change the tone of this hat just a little bit, I can just flick right over the top. I don't lose the blue that's underneath, but I do change the saturation of that blue just a little bit, and it gives me a different shade. So I think that grays are very frequently underutilized, but it allows you to extend your palette without having to purchase a bunch of different markers. You can does that make sense, Libby?
Yeah, it does.
Change your undertone a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I'll do that too sometimes when I'm coloring a critter and I put a little pink in their ear and then I'm like, whoa, that pink's a little too much pink. I'll go in with the gray to kind of tone it down a little bit as well.
You want to dial it back a little bit. So yes, so we offer a traditional warm gray and cool gray in this line. And one thing that's we also offer is a red gray, which is really nice. It's very subtle, but it has just a little bit of a red cast to it. And I hesitate to even say that because you don't pick it up and think, oh, it reads red, but it does. And it gives you just a little bit different perspective on that color.
Yeah, I literally, I have the RGs and I never put in my brain that meant red gray. That's interesting.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to, but that would be my one tip. If you're looking to add, make sure you add a couple of grays because that lets you extend. So Wendy says, I've never heard of red gray.
Mm-hmm.
I know, right? So let me see, since you can see a little bit better. Here's the series. These would be cool grays on the far right, and then warm grays in the center. And then you've got red grays to the left of the warm. So they don't scream red. They're not overwhelming.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
Adriana says, any tips for coloring faces and where to place the shading? I like to give a little shape, maybe define the eye or the forehead instead of the whole face being one big circle. So yes, that we could spend probably 2 hours, couldn't we, Adriana, talking about faces. But here on Grandpa, I'll just kind of let you know how I approached it. I wanted kind of the lightest area to be up on the top of his forehead and on top of his head, because I knew that was going to be really close to a light source, be a little bit shinier. And then I brought some definition in down around his chin, around his mustache as his dimples curved. And then between his eyeball and his eyebrow, I gave it just a little bit of shadow for his eye socket. Oh. So definitely do that. And you can definitely do that. One thing when I brought the depth in is I had done his complete base coat, Adriana, first, and then I came back in with a little bit darker value, and I brought the eye sockets and the shading around his mouth after that first layer had dried. That way I don't get, if you don't let that first layer dry, your color is just going to blend in and you don't get any crisp distinction. But like on his eyes or around his chin, you want that, even as small and subtle as it is, you want there to be a distinction there. So
Love it.
yep.
Well, somehow I managed to color on the back, get a little color on the back of my hand, and it really looks like I'm bleeding.
You need a little
Like, how did I get marker there? I don't even know how I did that, but
you need a little alcohol wipe or
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm not worried about it. I just thought it was funny.
I picked up a marker the other day and I went to jam the cap on and I had color all over my hand.
Mhm.
So it happens. It happens.
It does.
Let me pick up. I'm going to work on this little girl and show you the difference. I've got, this is like some R0s here.
Ah, thank you.
And so now I'll do this little girl's, I don't know how much time you have left, Libby.
Well, we don't have a definite ending point whenever we're done.
When everybody leaves us, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
So on this little girl's suit, I'll do these in R5.1 and R5.3, and I may bring in a little bit of R5.5, but I'm just changing that middle number from a 0, which is very pure color, to 5, which is going to be more desaturated. It's going to have a little bit more gray in it. And so you can kind of see the difference. This looks more mauve than,
Oh yeah.
right? And I just kind of get that first color on.
I need to just like swatch out some trios, I think, just to have handy so I can visualize them when I'm coloring.
Yes, that's helpful. And this little girl, I may work on her for, sometimes the smallest spaces need the most attention, it feels like.
Yeah.
That's operator errors sometimes.
I like those colors. That was our 5.1 and 5.3.
5.1 and 5.3. And then there is a 5.5 too. But
5.3 is what I often use for cheeks on my critters.
Oh yeah, really cute. So sometimes I will let the blending happen on the paper, but sometimes I'll use a lighter color, like in this case, the 5.1, and I will just I'll use that kind of as a paintbrush to pick up color off of my marker. There's a tip for you.
Yeah.
That's another tip for if you have very limited range of color, you can get a smoother blend that way in smaller spaces, because you're not trying to go back and forth with two different colors and make them blend with each other. So you just use your lighter color, in this case, the 5.1, and just pick up a little bit of color off of the nib of the 5.3, and then you can bring it in, and it's not so intense as taking that 5.3 right to the paper, but it allows you to get some colored definition.
Lori, I think she was answering your question as you were typing it. So, and sorry, I distracted you with my kitty. But yeah, that's exactly what she was doing with the tips.
Yeah. So I would call that tip to tip blending. And like I said, I like it in smaller spaces.
I always forget to do that. Thank you for that reminder. That's great.
It's just a whole lot of playing is how it happens for me. I just kind of mess around with it, and then if I do that tip to tip and I want to go back to my pure color, I just rub it off on a side of paper and come back, smooth it out. So I got outside of the lines up there on her little swimsuit. So I take that 0 and just push that back in. And then I'm going to let that dry. If I would keep working that 0 over my mistake, it will just be like the dam gates opened and the color will start coming back out. So my tip for using the colorless blender is I'd rather use a little bit and go slow and then come back.
Those are great tips. I need to have more patience. I think that's my biggest takeaway from this.
Yep. So, and a lot of people, everybody kind of develops their own technique, what works for them too. So I would encourage you just to play around and see what works for you in your space and on your paper. Different papers will react differently to the ink. If you think about, that's true of any medium, right? You might not use the same paper to do watercolor that you would pick up to do stamping or stencil blending. And it's the same with alcohol marker. And sometimes you have to compensate. I don't know. What paper are you using, Libby?
I think I have Nina paper here, actually.
Yeah.
But I that's one thing we didn't really touch on, the fact. And what paper do you recommend the most?
So I like Nina. I use Nina quite a bit. And I'm coloring today on Express It blending card. I like that. I like the Express It because it's really smooth and tight. It's a very tight weave, so it tends to hold the marker color right down where I put it. But I do like Nina too. Nina blends really beautifully. I just know it's a little bit softer, so I have to kind of compensate and maybe not use quite as much ink.
Yeah, I think that's probably part of the problem I was having. So do you have any thoughts on hammer mill? Do you like it or hate it, or no thoughts?
I haven't used it with Olo. I've used it to do like foiling, right? It's super smooth. Have you used it with alcohol markers?
Not recently, so I wouldn't want to say whether I like it or not, but
I haven't. One thing that we have, and I can share a link to it too if you want me to, but one of the artists in our office, who is amazing, Elisa, she did a paper test, and I think hammer mill is one of the papers that she tested, but she took the same image on a series of different papers, and then she colored with the same technique. And then she shared her feedback on that paper, why she liked it, why she didn't like it, whether or not if it bled, she kind of shared where it bled out for her, where it held tight. But I could share that link at the same time. And it just kind of is an awareness to a lot of different things will work. It's just trying things that you like. So, Mama, why does my paper pill when I am coloring? It shouldn't pill when you color with alcohol markers. It just, going to depend on the paper that you use, but most papers that we're talking about with alcohol ink are not going to pill. They will pill with water, with a water-based product, but typically the alcohol will evaporate fast enough that you shouldn't have that paper pilling. Yes, Wendy, practice, 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 correct? That's what it takes. So everybody needs to stamp a bunch of images in the next couple of days and then have your like holiday hideout ready. So when you are on relative overload over the next couple of weeks, you just retreat to your space and give yourself a little color therapy.
That's genius. Perfect. Yep.
So, I mean, if that happens to you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and wrap this up. Any other last minute questions for Lori? If not, do look for her post over in the MFT Insiders group on Facebook if you're a Facebook user. And again, if you have questions and you're not a Facebook user and you want us to maybe see them after this, if you're watching on replay, put them in the main comments on YouTube, not in the chat box, because that'll help us see them easier. All right. So thank you so much for being here today, Lori.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I learned so much.
So thank you, Kim, for having me.
And just a reminder to everybody that MFT does have Olo markers and all the accessories on the website. So you can check out the colors there and pick up some colors with your Wednesday Blitz Day order today, it's not 45% off, but you could just add those markers right in there. But the grandparents that she was using on those cute stamped images are on sale today. So yay for that.
And I
All
didn't
right.
talk about the price point, but they are
Yeah.
probably about half of anything else that you've looked at. So they're an excellent price point for that.
For sure. Absolutely. I love that about them. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Lori. And maybe we'll do this again someday in the future because it was really fun to watch you color. So
Be
thank
awesome.
you for everything.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you again soon.